walked up to the headboard, my phone in hand, flashlight shaking as I raised it. The beam swept across the room, but I couldn't shake the sensation that someone was sitting inches from my feet. His eyes were wide open, unblinking, and his mouth moved in a whisper that wasn't directed at me, and the whispering started again, louder now. I could almost make out the words. "You see me, you shouldn't." His eyes were unreadable. Then he said I wasn't supposed to pick you up. Hey, hello, 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 hello. Hope you are doing well as always. We have yet another compilation of scary stories from Reddit. There are 5 in total. We'll get straight to the first one. I hope you enjoy. I travel for work pretty often, mostly staying in chain hotels near highways or airports. I don't really think much about them anymore. Every room feels the same. Stale carpet, patterned bedspread, desk with a lamp that doesn't quite work. This trip was late in spring. My company sent me to a mid-sized sitter for a 3-day training. The hotel they booked was one of those budget places. Decent reviews, nothing fancy, but it was clean enough. When I checked in, the woman at the desk seemed distracted. She gave me my key card and hesitated before saying, "You're in 423. Something in the way she said it made me pause, like she was about to say something else, but then thought better of it. I almost asked if there was an issue with the room, but she quickly looked down at her monitor. I shrugged it off and went upstairs. The 4th floor hallway had a smell I couldn't place. Not smoke, not mould, it was just old. Like the walls themselves hadn't been touched in decades. 423 was at the far end of the hall, tucked into a corner. The door looked no different than the others, but when I slid the key in, I swear I felt the faintest vibration in the handle, as if someone had been holding it from the other side. When I opened the door, the room was just like any other. Queen bed, beige curtains, ugly framed art, but it felt heavy. I unpacked, went to the evening seminar, and came back around 10 p.m. I was tired. I locked the door, set my bag on the desk, and lay down. Sometime after midnight, I woke up. At first, I thought it was just the hotel making noises, the pipes knocking, HVAC kicking on. But then I heard it again, a sound from inside the room. It wasn't movement exactly, more like a breath, a soft, steady inhale and exhale. I froze, staring at the ceiling, ears straining. I told myself it had to be coming through the vents, maybe from the next room over. But the more I listened, the more certain I became that it was coming from inside my room. I sat up slowly and scanned the room. Nothing, no one, just shadows stretching across the carpet. And the weirdest part, the sound stopped as soon as I started to move. The next morning, I showered, dressed, and started packing my laptop bag when I noticed something strange. The desk chair had been pulled out. Not just a little, it was angled toward the bed, as if someone had been sitting there all night, watching me. I stared at it for ages, trying to remember if I'd moved it. I hadn't sat at the desk once since arriving. I pushed it back in, told myself housekeeping must have done it, though there was no reason they'd been in there while I slept. That night, I went out for dinner with co-workers. The woman on duty swore no. Housekeeping was done by 3 p.m, and nobody had been assigned to that floor since. She offered to move me to another room. For some reason, I said no. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe I didn't want to be the guy who freaked out over a chair. Before I went to bed, I pushed the desk against the wall, just to prove to myself I wasn't imagining it. I woke again around 2 a.m, not to breathing this time, to the sound of something shifting in the room. It was subtle, like someone adjusting themselves in a chair. I turned my head slowly, terrified of what I'd see. The desk chair was no longer against the wall. It was closer, closer to the bed. I scrambled to flick on the lamp, but the bulb just hummed, flickered once, and went dark. I backed up to the headboard, my phone in hand, flashlight shaking as I raised it. The beam swept across the room. It was empty, nobody there. But the chair was right beside the bed now, close enough that if someone had been sitting in it, I could have reached out and touched them. I left the room that night and checked out at 3 a.m. without a single word. The clerk barely looked at me, just slid the receipt across the counter, like she'd seen this before. I'll never know what was in that room with me, or if it was all just in my head, but I've never stayed on a 4th floor since. It's been almost 15 years since that night, and I still think about it more often than I'd like. Back then, I was 16. My best friend Daniel had just gotten his driver's license, and we were inseparable that summer. We spent most nights at each other's houses, staying up too late, playing video games, eating junk food. But the night I stayed over at his place, the night I'm about to tell you about, I only ever went back once after that, and even then, I wouldn't spend the night again. Daniel lived with his mom in an older 2-story house at the edge of town. It wasn't run down, but it had the atmosphere older homes carry. Uneven floors, doors that stuck in their frames, the faint smell of dust baked into the wood. I'd been there plenty of times before, but the night I stayed over, something about that house felt different. We stayed in the basement, where Daniel had his setup. It was cosy enough, couch, TV, a desk with his computer, and a futon where I usually crashed. Around midnight, we were still playing when his mum came down to say she was going to bed. She seemed tired, but the way she looked past us, like at something in the far corner of the room, gave me a chill. She didn't say anything else, just climbed back upstairs. Not long after, weird things started happening. The basement door, the one that led up to the kitchen, creaked open slowly. We both looked up, expecting to see his mum, but the doorway was empty. Must be the draft, Daniel said, though the air was still and heavy. He got up, shut the door, and even locked it. An hour later, while we were scrolling through YouTube, I heard movement above us, soft footsteps. I whispered, "Your mum's still up." Daniel frowned. "No, her room's on the other side of the house." We both paused the video, trying to listen, and the footsteps stopped as soon as we did. By 2 a.m, we decided to sleep. Daniel took the couch, and I lay down on the futon. The TV was off, but the glow from the computer screen still lit the room faintly. I had just started to drift off when I felt it. Pressure at the end of the futon, like had sat down. I opened my eyes, certain Daniel was messing with me, but he was still on the couch, back turned, breathing slow and steady. I tried to convince myself it was just the mattress shifting, but I couldn't shake the sensation that someone was sitting inches from my feet. That's when the basement door creaked open again, this time slower, longer. I sat up, staring into the black doorway at the top of the stairs. I swear I saw a shape, not Daniel's mum. It was taller, still, just watching. I froze until the door swung shut on its own. I didn't sleep much after that. At some point near dawn, I must have passed out, because the next thing I remember was Daniel shaking me awake. Sunlight was pouring in through the small basement window, and his mum was calling us for breakfast. I was groggy and disorientated, but I knew what I'd seen, or thought I'd seen. I didn't want to say anything until we were alone. Over cereal, I asked Daniel if his mum ever came down at night. He looked at me, dead serious, and said, "She doesn't use the basement. She hates it down there. Says she hears things when she's alone." I laughed nervously, waiting for him to grin or tell me he was joking, but he didn't. I never spent the night at Daniel's again. Even now, all these years later, when I think back to that moment on the futon, the feeling of weight at my feet, the slow creak of that door, and the tall, unmoving shape in the doorway, I still feel the same sick dread. And the worst part, Daniel and I lost touch after high school. I have no idea if he still lives in the house, or if whatever was in that basement ever left. I used to work at a distribution warehouse about 10 years ago. It was the kind of job where the days bled together, long shifts, fluorescent lights, repetitive tasks. When you're surrounded by the same faces every day, you get to know people's routines, their personalities, the little quirks that make them who they are. So, when Ryan started acting off, I noticed. Ryan was new, hired maybe 3 months before things got weird. He was quiet, but in a way that didn't feel shy, more like he was keeping something back. Still, he showed up on time, did his work, and stayed out of trouble. Then one week, I noticed he stopped eating lunch in the break room. He'd take his food, disappear somewhere, and come back without having touched most of it. He also started avoiding eye contact, not just with me, but with everyone. If you passed him in the aisle, he'd move fast, eyes down, like he was in a hurry to be anywhere else. I remember one night in particular, around 10 p.m, I caught him standing perfectly still in the far corner of the warehouse, facing the wall. No clipboard, no boxes, he was just standing there. When I called out to him, he startled like I'd woke him up from a deep sleep. Things escalated slowly. Ryan started lingering around places he didn't need to be. He'd show up in aisles he wasn't assigned to, watching. Sometimes I'd catch him staring across the floor, and the moment I looked back, he'd turn away too quickly. A few of us joked about it, but the truth was, no one liked being near him after dark. The strangest thing was the humming, low, tuneless, almost under his breath. At first, I thought it was just a nervous habit, but after a while, it started to feel deliberate, like he wanted people to hear it. One night, I walked into the bathroom and froze. The lights were off, but I heard humming. When I flicked the switch, Ryan was standing in front of the mirror, his hands braced on the sink, staring at his own reflection. He didn't flinch when the light came on, didn't look at me, just kept humming. I backed out, pretending I hadn't seen anything. It all came to a head during one of my overnight shifts. The warehouse was almost empty, just me, Ryan, and one supervisor in the office. Around 2 a.m, I realised I hadn't seen Ryan in over an hour. That wasn't unusual. Sometimes workers ducked off to rest or stretch, but something in my gut told me to look for him. The far end of the building had a storage room no one really used. The door was slightly ajar, and there was that sound again, humming. I pushed the door open slowly. Inside, Ryan was crouched in the corner, facing away from me. His head was bowed low, and in front of him, on the floor, was his untouched lunchbox. He was rocking back and forth, whispering words I couldn't make out between the humming. I froze, and then he turned his head. Not all the way, just enough so I could see his face in profile. His eyes were wide open, unblinking, and his mouth moved in a whisper that wasn't directed at me. It was like he was answering someone else in the room. But we were alone. I whispered his name. He stopped rocking. The humming cut off instantly. For the longest second of my life, he just crouched there, frozen, before standing up in one jerky motion. He turned toward me, smiled too wide, and said, "I wasn't talking to you." Then he walked out of the room like nothing had happened. I didn't last much longer after that. 2 weeks later, I quit and Ryan stayed. I still run into people who worked at the warehouse, and whenever his name comes up, everyone gets quiet. No one really knows what happened to him after. Some say he just stopped showing up one day. Others claim he got transferred to another facility. But here's the thing that keeps me up sometimes. On my very last shift, as I was clocking out, I heard that humming again. It was faint, coming from the dark end of the warehouse. And even though I knew I should have just walked away, I swear to God I saw him there, Ryan, standing perfectly still, facing the wall, exactly the way I found him the first night. For the past 3 years, I've worked nights at a distribution centre outside the city. It's the kind of job where you clock in at 4 p.m. and don't leave until 1 in the morning. Usually, you're exhausted, covered in dust, and just wanting your bed. Because I don't drive, I rely on public transport. That means the last bus of the night, the 1:10 a.m. route. It's usually empty, maybe 1 or 2 people scattered near the front, and a tired driver who doesn't even bother checking tickets anymore. I've grown used to the routine. I know the rhythm of the ride, the sound of the engine straining on the hills, the flicker of the overhead fluorescent lights. I even know the regular faces. Which is why the night she showed up, I noticed her immediately. She got on 2 stops after mine, wearing a long black coat, even though it was still warm out. Her hair was dark, pinned up clumsily, and she carried no bag, no phone, nothing. She walked straight down the aisle and sat 3 rows behind me. I didn't turn fully, just caught her reflection in the window. She was looking at me. Not around. sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed in that steady stare, made my skin itch. The next night, she was there again. Same stop, same seat, same stare. This time, I tested it. When I moved to the other side of the bus, she followed 2 rows over and sat directly behind me. I didn't hear her footsteps. It was like she just appeared there. The bus was empty, except for us and the driver. I remember turning slightly, pretending to stretch, just to glance back. She was leaning forward now, elbows on her knees, staring through me, like she was waiting for me to acknowledge her. The hairs on my arms stood up. When I got off, I expected her to keep riding, but I heard footsteps behind me, slow, precise, matching my own. I walked faster down the block, fumbling for my keys. I didn't want to turn around, but the urge won, and I looked. The street was empty. She wasn't there. By the 3rd night, I was dreading the bus. My stomach knotted as soon as I clocked out. I even thought about calling in sick just to avoid her. Sure enough, she was waiting at the same stop. Only this time, when she boarded, she didn't sit behind me. She sat next to me. The smell at first, stale, damp, like clothes that had been left to mould in a basement. Her coat brushed against my arm as she sat, and though the bus was nearly empty, she pressed close. I froze and my throat went dry. Her head tilted slightly, and I realised she was whispering, too quiet for me to make out the words, just a steady, low hiss, like someone talking through clenched teeth. I stood up, muttered something, and moved to the very front near the driver. I didn't dare look back. The driver didn't seem to notice her, not when she got on, not when she sat down, and not when she followed me. I wanted to ask him, "Can you see her?" But the words stuck in my throat. When my stop came, I bolted off the bus, practically sprinting down the block. I didn't hear her footsteps this time, but when I reached my building, I swore I saw the shape of a woman in the reflection of the glass door, just standing there across the street. I couldn't take it anymore. By the 4th night, I decided I'd confront her. I boarded, heart pounding, waiting for her. She got on like clockwork, same stop, same coat. But instead of sitting behind me or beside me, she stood in the aisle, right in front of my seat. Her face was pale, her eyes dark pits that seemed to swallow the dim bus lights. Up close, her skin looked wrong, too smooth, like wax. And the whispering started again, louder now. I could almost make out the words. "You see me, you shouldn't." I shut up and staggered down the aisle, blurting to the driver, "Can you stop? I need to get off." The driver glanced at me through the mirror. We just pulled away from the stop. Next one's 5 minutes. I turned, desperate to see if she was still behind me. She wasn't. The aisle was empty. But when the bus jolted over a bump, I felt fingers graze the back of my neck, cold, lingering. That was the last night I ever rode that bus. I started walking the 3 miles home, no matter how late, no matter how exhausted I was. I'd rather risk the dark streets than risk seeing her again. Still, every so often, when I pass that stop, I think I see her. standing there under the streetlight, waiting. It was around 11:45 p.m. when I ordered the Uber. I'd been at a friend's place across the city. Nothing wild, just a late dinner and some drinks. I didn't want to take the subway that late, so Uber felt safer. I remember pulling up the app and seeing that a driver named Michael was 2 minutes away. A silver Toyota, license plate ending in 47L. Everything looked normal. The app even showed his driver rating, 4.97 stars, practically perfect. When he pulled up, I double-checked the plate. It matched. He rolled down the window and leaned across the seat. "You Emily?" he asked. I nodded, got in, and buckled up. The car smelled faintly of air freshener, pine-scented, the kind that comes from one of those cardboard trees hanging from the mirror. He seemed ordinary, mid-40s, glasses, looked a little tired. He was dressed in a polo shirt and a jacket. He confirmed my destination, and I confirmed it back, and then we pulled away. It should have been a routine 20-minute ride, but from the moment we merged onto the main road, something felt wrong. For the first 10 minutes, it was uneventful. The usual awkward silence between strangers. I stared at the city lights blurring past, half distracted by my phone. Then I realised we weren't heading toward the interstate. Instead, we veered off into side streets. At first, I thought maybe there was traffic, maybe he knew a shortcut. But the further we went, the darker it got. Streetlights grew sparse, businesses disappeared, and the houses thinned out until we were driving through stretches of road lined only by trees. Isn't the highway the other way?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. He didn't answer at first. His hands gripped the wheel a little tighter. Finally he said, "This way's faster." Except, I'd lived in this city long enough to know it wasn't. I glanced at the app. It still showed us heading in the right direction, just slower. But the GPS route seemed to be recalculating constantly, like the car kept drifting off the mapped road. My chest tightened. "Can you just take the interstate?" I asked. He didn't respond. That's when I realised he hadn't looked at the GPS once. He was driving without it. I tried to distract myself, to rationalise. Maybe he lived nearby and knew these roads better. Maybe his phone mount was broken. But then he started asking me questions. "Do you live alone?" The way he asked it made my skin crawl. I muttered something non-committal, pretending to scroll my phone. A minute later, "Anyone waiting up for you tonight?" I lied. I said yes, that my boyfriend was home, expecting me. But when I glanced in the rearview mirror, he was staring right at me, and for a second, I thought he knew I was lying. His mouth curved into a faint smile, not friendly, more like he was amused. I typed out a quick message to my friend. "Hey, I don't feel safe in this Uber. Can you track me on the app?" Before I could hit send, the signal dropped. No service. The bars on my phone were completely empty. We were deep in some wooded stretch of road now, no houses in sight. The only light came from his headlights and the faint glow of the dashboard. That's when he asked another question, softer this time. Do you ever feel like people are watching you? I gripped the door handle. My mind raced. Should I jump out? Demand he stop? But the car was moving fast, and we were nowhere near civilization. I forced my voice steadier. I really need to be home soon. Can you take me back to the main road? He didn't answer. Instead, he slowed the car. We were on a narrow stretch of road with no shoulder, and trees pressed close on both sides. He pulled the car to a crawl, then stopped completely. The silence was suffocating. He turned his head slowly and looked at me full on. His glasses caught the faint reflection of the dashboard lights, but behind them, his eyes were unreadable. Then he said in almost a whisper, "I wasn't supposed to pick you up." "What do you mean?" I said. He didn't reply, just sat there staring, as if waiting for me to figure it out. Finally, I pushed my door open. Cold night air rushed in. I half expected him to grab my arm, but he didn't move. I stumbled out of the car, my heart racing, clutching my phone like a lifeline. I didn't even look back. I just started walking down the road, not sure where it led. Behind me, I heard the engine start again. The car crept forward, and then past me slowly. When the car rolled past, I glanced through the passenger window. The back seat was full of things: a blanket, a roll of duct tape, a shovel, and a phone mounted to the seat, screen glowing, showing the Uber app. Except on his screen, it didn't show my ride. It showed someone else's name, someone else's photo. It wasn't mine. I eventually found my way to a gas station, where I called a friend to pick me up. When I checked the app later, my ride was marked as complete. Michael had 5 more stars added to his profile. I reported him, of course, sent screenshots, details, everything. Uber told me they'd investigate. His profile disappeared a week later, but I can't stop thinking about what he said on that dark road. I wasn't supposed to pick you up. So who was he supposed to pick up? And what would have happened if it had been them? So that is the last story for today. As always, I hope you enjoyed them. I did say on my previous video, if you have any suggestions or requests from any stories that you've seen on Reddit, please do send them my way. Just put them into the comments. I will compile a list and get a video recorded with them. So until next time, take care